my God, why hast thou forsaken me?
Yes, the words of Jesus on the cross is something that is full of mystery, because it appears to us that Jesus is showing disappointment to God. Did really abandon, did really God abandon Jesus? Why was Jesus able to say, my God, why have you forsaken me?" From the Gospel of Matthew. Welcome back to our fourth episode of the 7 last words of Jesus. And once again, Brother Anthony will help us reflect, meditate, and bring us the message of God. Hi, Brother Anthony. This is such a heavy, a tough message of Jesus that we really need to focus on the message of this in our spiritual enlightenment.
Mother Mary also delivered the baby. The hosts from heaven did not show up, at where she was and serve as midwives. She went through the birth pangs. She went through the pain and suffering as she gave birth to Jesus. Question is, did God abandon her? Jesus is suffering. He's going through pain and suffering. Is God abandoning Jesus? There is an incredible spiritual mystery to this. And that is, you see, spiritual enlightenment involves realization of yourself, realization of our being as the image and likeness of God, realizing our soul as the image and likeness of God. So in our regular lives, in our ordinary lives, human beings is the only creature in the whole universe, and among the whole entire created beings, that we do atrocities, we do injustice, we do all kinds of trespasses and all of that as we derive pleasure. The only species in the entire created beings who get angry. Yeah, the others, they also attack and kill. The animals do that, but that's not out of anger. It's out of necessity. They need food, and that was one reason. The second reason is, they react out of fear that we might do something to them, so they just turn to attack us. It's not out of anger. And we are the only species in the whole world, who live in the past and expect something in the future. We pray reflecting on the past, and we want to pray for something that is going to happen to us in the future. As far as the present moment reality is concerned, we are completely ignorant of it. See, and our ego has a lot to do with it. See, we were not born with an ego. We created ego. See, can we create things like an ego? Yes, we can. We are the image and likeness of God. Yeah, we can create anything. Okay? As long as we realize the image and likeness of God, creativity, miracles, and everything is within our reach. It is not something that is, that is strange. Everything is within our reach. And that's why Jesus said, in my name, you can do greater things than what I'm doing. So we created the ego. And the ego is, it's a sort of an incredible energy that is controlling our mind. But we were created, so that our soul will have control of our mind. So we are supposed to do everything because the soul wants to do it. But what we do is we do everything because that's what our ego wants us to do. Major conflict going on between, among us. But self-realization or enlightenment, spiritual enlightenment, it really is a journey of aligning our souls with our mind, moving away from ego. Ego is not even a consideration. Leave the ego alone. Okay? But we need to come into alignment with our spirit or with our soul. That's really what spiritual realization is all about. That is what enlightenment is all about, to know who we are as the image and likeness of God. Then once the image and likeness of God begins to control our mind, then we are true mystics. That's what happened to Mother Mary. The image and likeness of God within her controlled her mind throughout her life. See, moving away from our ego and going towards journeying towards our soul, it's not an easy task. It will involve a lot of learning, a lot of acquiring of knowledge and all of that. Most importantly, it demands our free will. And our free will, when we are on that path, in that journey, is often going to be challenged to an extent, that we feel pain, we feel sufferings. And we will run into that all the time. In those times, we will often feel that God is abandoning us. When our loved one hurts us, for instance, we feel that the God is not listening to our prayers. We feel abandoned. Is it normal? Well, when you are in a spiritual journey, it is more than normal. It happens all the time. But that process is not about alignment. It's not about abandonment. That process is about refining us. See, when you take a rod of iron and when you just put it into the heat and just beat it again and again and put it back into the fire and bring it back and just beat it again and again, how does it turn out? It kind of loses a number of its properties and it really becomes a new creation. Isn't it? So does it mean abandonment is going on? No. A new birth is going on. A new creation is going on. And a new birth and new creation is always about pain and sufferings. See, when God is on the cross and all of that, what was going on was the salvation of the entire universe, not just humanity alone. Through humanity, the whole world is going to benefit from it. When the humanity becomes enlightened, the whole world will benefit from it. That's, as described in Ezekiel 47. Everywhere you go will benefit from God. You don't even have to do anything. Just look at them. Just be a part of it. Just be there. God does everything else. That is what enlightened living is all about. Jesus is saying, in my name, you can do greater things. It doesn't mean we are going to do greater things than Jesus. No. The name of Jesus. Jesus in us is doing everything. Our free will is making it a conduit. It's an enabler. So it actually is fine-tuning of our free will. Okay, fine-tuning of our free will from fine-tuning of our free will from what a vain, evil creatures that we are since our ego into a finely evolved new creation. And our free will totally participating in the will of God. That's what is going on. God is not abandoning us. God is fine-tuning us. God is making us a new creation. God is putting us through a process of birth all over again. When we are born, it's not just the mother is the only one who is suffering. We are also suffering. Just imagine the size. We are 7 pounds, 8 pounds, and we need to come through a narrow canal, and how incredibly painful that is. You see what I mean? And we all went through that. And so the pain and suffering is not the mother's alone. The child, even at that age, it goes through immense pain and sufferings. Immense. In a condition that the child cannot even cry. In silence, it's suffering so much. So much. Is that abandonment? No. It is a whole birthing process. And Jesus also went through the birthing process when he came out and when he departed. That's what is going on here. So it is not God is abandoning us, but the process of that pain and suffering and the purpose of that pain and suffering is what Jesus is trying to communicate to us, the mystery in these words. Purpose and the reason, and for which we must become fully and willing participants. See, that's what is going on. A mother pushes the baby, knowing that it is going to be incredibly painful. She is going to suffer. She's going to go through all of that. And the baby also chooses to come out of it, in spite of the pain and suffering that is going through. See, it's the free will of the mother and the free will of the baby. That's how the new creation is coming out, is being born again. That's what is happening here. It's not abandonment. It's the process of a new birth.
Yes, indeed. Lenten season is not just remembering what happened in the time of Jesus. It's not just a story, but rather it is our way of participating in the suffering of Jesus. As we also knew that Jesus is a true man and true God. He experienced suffering in his lifetime here on earth. As we are followers of Jesus, we too can follow him by offering our suffering to his heart. And hopefully, this suffering will help us transform for a better person.
Um, there is something that I really want to kind of stress on it. You see, Saint Teresa of Lisieux, or some of us call him Saint Teresa of Little Flower, and she died when she was very young. She was a very sick child. She endured a lot of sufferings because of her sickness. But she always questioned, she asked the other sisters around her, am I suffering enough for Jesus? See, she always asked that question, is my suffering enough for Jesus? Is Jesus being joyous in my suffering? Is Saint Teresa of Lisieux asked that question again and again, to all the nurses, all the sisters who come to visit her, and everybody, is Jesus happy? Is Jesus being joyous? Am I suffering enough for him? See, so in other words, what I'm trying to say is, to realize that our suffering has a very, very meaningful purpose. I mean, how much are we willing to endure it, as Jesus did? As a child is about to be born, is going through and doing it. As a mother who is delivering a child is going through and doing it. How willingly they are, in spite of all of that. So it is not actually a matter of surrendering to God our pain and suffering and ask him to repair it. Well, then if we do that, it's going to keep coming back again. It's not going away. You see, it goes away when we come out of the birth canal. It goes away when the baby comes out, and the result is absolute joy, and delight when the baby comes out, isn't it? See, so how willingly we are going to endure it as we go through go through the suffering and pain and all of that, in a joy of gratefulness to God. God, are you happy in my sufferings? Are you joyous in my sufferings? It's not exactly abandonment. Believe me, he is suffering with us. When we suffer, he is suffering with us. When Jesus suffered, Father in heaven also suffered along with him. See, what did Jesus say? I see what my Father is doing. I do just as he does. Isn't it? So in his sufferings, did that not exist? Of course it did. Father in heaven also suffered along with Jesus. That's how the salvation took place. Okay? So it's not surrendering, it is not prayers, it is not that, it is not this. It's exactly what Saint Teresa of Lisieux was went through. It is exactly what every mother giving birth to a child is going through. I'm going to endure this. I'm going to endure this. I'm going to endure this, so help me God. I'm going to endure this, so help me God. And that's how the pain and suffering comes to an end. Not by way of surrendering. Okay?
Right.
Not by way of praying that it goes away. No. It is the grace to go through that. It's the grace to endure that. the grace to endure and witness the joy of God when it is over.
Amen.
It is even the joy of witnessing how Jesus is enduring our suffering as we go through it. Remember, he said, carry my yoke. My yoke means two bulls are carrying it, not just one. It's my yoke means he's on the other side. We are on this side. So when we are pulling the yoke, he's also pulling along with us. So when we are suffering, when we are going through, the pain and all of that, it is not a matter of Jesus not being a part of it, or Jesus not being a part of it. It is not even a question of abandonment. No, not at all. It's the opposite. He is suffering along with us. He is pulling it along with us. We need the grace of God to endure that. So together we can come to an end. We need our free will to endure that. So together with Jesus, we can come to the end of it. That's really what it is. So if at all we are going to pray for the grace to endure the pain and suffering.
So let our prayers be, Lord, please help us to overcome the suffering. And we do not
Endure the suffering.
endure the suffering.
Not overcome. Not overcome. We want that suffering. We want to go through that suffering. We want to endure that. We want the grace to endure that. So we can experience the joy of having given birth to a child.